Hello, and welcome to another NASSP webinar. My name is John Norai, and I'm the moderator for today. Our topic is using collaborative conversation guided to enhance your PLC. And I'll back up to that slide again in a moment for the title. But before we start, we have a couple of housekeeping things to take care of. If you have any technical problems during Welcome to today's webinar. I'm John Norai, your moderator, and our title is Using Collaborative Conversation Guides to Enhance your PLC. If you have any technical problems during the broadcast, you're going to want to have this number, 855-352-9002, and you'll need the webinar ID number, 446-276-035. Give you a moment to jot down those two numbers. That's for technical assistance. Call that 800 number and use that webinar ID, please. We're asking you to help us spread the word by tweeting if you're so inclined, and use hashtag NASSP webinar. We also tell you that we're on Facebook, and you can find us at facebook.com/principles. Our webinar is nassp.org, and it's important for me to mention that because if you want a certificate of attendance after this is over, you'll need to go to that website address at the bottom, nassp.org/webinar completed. And without further ado, I would like to introduce today's presenters. Jacqueline Hall, was born in Washington, D.C. She's a product of the Prince George's County Public Schools, and she received her BA in Communications from the University of Maryland, College Park. Her MS in Supervision and Leadership from Trinity University, and an MA in Reading Education from Bowie State. Her doctorate is from the University of Maryland, College Park. I should stop and say go Terps. I'm grad too, Jackie. She's worked in Prince George's County system for 15 years, and currently she's the principal of James Golson Middle School. Dr. Marshall's passion is educating our youth and partnering with our parents. The quote that guides her passion is, "We can't predict the future, but we can create the future." Our other presenter that today is pictured on the screen is a member of the NASSP faculty, professional development faculty. She facilitates the Wallace work with principals, and I'll turn it over now to Jana Freeler. Jana, welcome.
Thank you, John. I might be the only one, but slides are not advancing.
Oh, well, they are for me, so let me see if I can figure out why they aren't for you. If you are, if you're not seeing the slides advance and you can put a note in the question box, I would appreciate that. No. I'm getting another text from someone saying the slides aren't advancing. Let me just look real quick here and see if I.
They are advancing now. I got that one.
Okay, so you're seeing the Wallace 5 slide?
Yeah, I see it.
Let me just go back one slide and say to the audience, I'm sorry for that technical problem. These are the photos of our presenters, and you heard their bios, and now I'll turn it over to Jana.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate it. This is another webinar in a series of webinars that are being done by leaders of schools that have participated in the Wallace NASSP principal professional learning communities. And we, over a series of 18 months, principals from all across the country got together, worked using the design thinking methodology to identify critical issues in their schools and in their districts that they wanted to tackle, and they wanted to create tools and ways that they can help other school leaders who may face some of these. This work is all based on the Wallace 5 Foundation, or the Wallace Foundation's 5 key leadership practices. And Wallace has done extensive research in schools, education, and school leadership. And they have identified 5 key practices, which are listed on your screen right there for you. And these are the practices that, according to Wallace and through the research, have proven out to be those things that are most effective for highly functioning school leaders to possess. And today we're going to focus on the last one, the 5th one, which is managing people, data, and processes to foster school improvement. So you'll see a tool that's based in that area. So John, if you could advance the slide, please. This is just a visual representation of design thinking methodology. What folks will see if they go on the internet is there are multiple interpretations of design thinking methodology. For our purposes, these are the stages that we went through. So principals that worked in this PLC went through the empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test phases to create the tools that and one of the tools specifically that you're going to learn about today. Design thinking methodology is not new, but it is being applied to to being used by school leaders to create that substantive and substantial change that they need to have happen in their schools. It's an iterative process. It's based on a very intense root cause analysis and then some different stages to go through to create prototypes. So John, you can go to the next slide.
I will, and I would like to say, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. I forgot to invite the audience to put questions into the question box. I see that a few have found it, but please, if you have questions as we go along, and we'll address those at the end. Thanks, Jana.
So I can tell you, because I worked on this project, that the evaluations and the reactions of the school leaders who worked on this were very positive, and they understood that once they left there, they had created something that would not only impact them in their schools or in their districts, but would impact the profession as a whole. But I think it's important, if you look at this quote or this saying that David Johns has, he was also one of the members of this committee. But he says, our research led us to the realization that there were limited resources in the field to serve as a guidance for teams in this area. Our task was to create a tool or design a system that would help teams push through this very real challenge so that the full benefits of PLCs could be realized for all students. And that's the beauty of a process like this, is that if there are very limited resources, the experts in the field, those who are closest to whatever challenge it is that they're facing, should be the ones who create the solutions to those challenges. And this is one leader's saying that indicates that through this process, that is true. So in a minute, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Jacqueline Hall. And Dr. Hall, I know that you're going to talk a little bit about one specific stage in the design thinking. And so I'm going to turn it over to you and let you talk through that process. Okay, John.
Okay, thank you very much. So the stage that we're going to focus on today is define. And define is a critical point because it allows you to focus on the problem or challenge that we all may face in our PLCs. And so that's what we discussed and even struggled with as our team, because so often as educators or building leaders, we want to get to the solution part, but not defining what are some of the concerns, issues, or challenges that we face that then allows for one to be reflective. And so the question that was posed by our team was, what has emerged and what is worthy of our focus as a team? And how should we communicate our challenge so that we know we are working towards the best solution? So again, not going straight to the solution, but spending more time with the challenge or problem. If you can go to the next slide. So success at the define stage, it allows the importance of synthesis, but kind of working through the data that supports or presents what the challenge may be that the teachers are facing in terms of meeting the needs of students. Collaborative, working together with that communication, planning, implementing, and advocating for our students. Quality problem statement and compelling process that generates ideas for solutions. So again, that takes time to do, which is often requires a lot of reflection that sometimes I think that we often skip over or don't spend a lot of time with, again, going to the solution. And when we then do that, we don't spend enough time at this defined stage, we then may not get to the appropriate solution for the particular challenge, but then takes more time. If you can go to the next slide. So I wanted to take a look at this quote here, which for me, and basically what I'm sharing with you is just so important and relevant. If I had an hour to save the world, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and 5 minutes finding the solution, by Albert Einstein. That resonates with me. It often has me go back as a leader or even thinking back as a teacher to say, wow, the amount of time that we need to spend with what's going on, what is the problem that we're facing, what is the solution, again, rather than straight going to the solution part. And I think that's just human nature. We just want to be able to address it. We want to fix it. But what our work allowed us to do is really to think about what is the problem at hand, what is the challenge at hand, to be able to create this tool so that we can get to the appropriate solution. So I know I put this quote up, and hopefully it'll resonate with you and you'll be able to do the same. If we can go to the next slide. So defining the problem requires looking for patterns. So again, it's that data. Synthesis of empathy data, find the patterns in the words and emotions of others. And so again, it just goes back to what the previous slides have indicated, is going back and making those connections. And that collaborate is important because we have to make time to plan and have those conversations with each other. Oftentimes when we look at collaborative planning with the PLCs, with our PLCs, it is how prepared are we and what data are we bringing to the table to make sure that we're making the appropriate connections to dig deep, to find the challenges, which then again goes to solutions. So we have to be patient enough to what we have with our public school system, Prince George's County, we use the data-wise process, is staying on the lower ladder of inference. We have to stay low and just ask the questions, look at the data, rather than, again, going straight to the solution. And we can go to the next slide. So the problem statement, is it meaningful, actionable, humanized, can be reframed as a question? So this was our problem statement for our design. Several tools for looking at student work already exist, but the next step for changing instructional practice as a result of the analysis of student work requires deeper levels of understanding and commitment among educators. So let me tell you, for my colleagues that I worked with Waller Foundation, it took us a while, if I could be quite transparent, to work through this, because why? We said, okay, here's the data, now here's how you address it. But we had to think of a tool and be really reflective on our own PLCs that are in our building to think about what tools are already there that analyzes the student work. So what are the next steps? So you analyze the student work. Now the challenge is in creating this tool is how do we then reflect on this work that we're doing to address the student work protocol that you've already went through. And so from this tool, we were able to be reflective practitioners and think about what we could also bring to our buildings and get the input of our teachers to really think about what tool would be impactful that will allow them to reflect on their own instructional practices to then be able to address the data that exists from already analyzing the student work. So it went back to how is our tool going to be meaningful, actionable, humanized, and can be reframed as a question, and our tool has to be able to answer that problem statement. We can go to the next slide. So what we created was the Collaborative Conversation Performance Guide. Our guide is organized into 3 domains, with the understanding that a team may only focus on one domain at a time or the entire school, or the entire tool holistically. So that is something, once we get to the tool, the PLC or school leaders will be able to determine as we work through that. This is a conversation guide. So it's not rigid, it moves, it's fluid. It allows, again, you to be reflective in the work that needs to be done. It allows for conversations to what we as educators are doing on behalf of our students in the classrooms. It allows us to spend time with that so that we can work to making a bigger difference for our students. So if we can go to the next slide. So I'm going to now talk about the 3 domains that's in our tool before actually getting to the tool. So the first one is instructional grouping. This is the first domain, and it allows the team to self-assess ways they're organizing students after the analysis of student work. So you've already gone through that protocol, and you've already looked at the student work. Our tool then says, okay, how have we organized our students in instructional grouping? And when we're saying instructional grouping, your PLC may determine that as cooperative groups, flexible groups, small guided groups, but are you grouping them based on the data? And it's meant to push educators toward differentiated approaches during core instruction where additional intervention may be needed. We can go to the next slide. Instructional delivery focus on pedagogy. So your teaching practice. And how is your teaching practice working toward the desired outcome to increase student achievement? What connections are we making with our students, which are research-based teacher practices? And those practices that we are implementing, are they meeting the needs of our students? Are they meeting the intended outcome? And are we providing the differentiated instruction to meet the needs of all of the students that are in your building? And then finally, the last domain is the collaborative culture. So this domain is quite critical because it allows one to reflect on how the PLC works as a team. Have norms been developed, and is there focus? How are we working collectively as a team, or is it more of an individual capacity? And the importance of engaging in all the work as reflective practitioners. And so we found that as collaborators, there can be a success or failure, and it is dependent on the collaborative culture on the team. And so that's why this conversation guide allows us to reflect, or allows the PLC to reflect on that work. It allows the team to come together to see how did we work as a team, because oftentimes when we actually did our presentation a couple of times, most may feel that, hey, you know, we do meet together. We have it. We have a PLC taking place. It happens weekly or monthly. But when we dig a little bit deeper, what data do you have to show that it's effective? Are the conversations happening effectively? And how is it meeting, again, the core needs of the students? So if we go to the next slide. So now we are at the tool, what you all have been waiting for. So again, this is the title, Collaborative Conversation Performance Guide. As you can see, there's the goal, which is the Collaborative Conversation Performance Guide is used to assess the impact of collaborative decisions and key processes that lead to improved student outcome. The work that you see, collaborative work to be accomplished prior to using the guide, this is something that you want to establish prior to. And so at this time, we won't be able to click on those links where you see established working norms or student work aligned with standards or common protocols. However, those are resources that you are able to refer, if at all possible, so that you can make sure that norms are established already amongst your PLC. Student work aligned with standards, how are they assessed, and common protocols when analyzing student work. So when you've done all of that, then the tool allows and you'll see that arrow: minimal justification with evidence, extensive justification. So we have the 3 domains, the key processes that I just reviewed with you in terms of what they are. And then we, as a team, came together to establish from beginning, developing, applying, innovating. And let me just share with you that that took time to develop as well, because again, we had to go back to get feedback. We had to actually use it in our own school buildings to make sure that we develop the appropriate language for this tool. And so you'll see for each domain, there are characteristics for beginning, developing, applying, innovating. And so you can use this tool after each PLC. You can use this tool when you, we found actually that it's most effective to do it after each collaborative planning session rather than waiting, because it gives immediate feedback in terms of the effectiveness of each domain and how we are reflecting in our work under each domain. But one of the things that was mentioned earlier is that the school may determine, do we want to focus solely on instructional grouping? Or do we want to focus on just our collaborative culture? Or do we want to look at the whole entire tool? That is a conversation that each PLC or building leader can determine based on the needs of the school. But as you work through this tool here, you're able to highlight. It can be a document. You can put it in any kind of document and share it, and then highlight from your conversations, where is the team as a whole? So when you look at instructional grouping, did we plan to organize students in instructional grouping for reteaching, or did we lack in that area? Or are we at the developing phase? The same with instructional delivery, which is our collaborative design of lessons that challenge and support student learning. Again, that pedagogy. Where are we in looking at the characteristics for each? Did we acknowledge that we need to create lessons that reflect research-based strategies, or are we consistently doing this? This really allows time for the educator to think, not just do, here's my lesson, here's what the data says I'm just going to do, but really think about that challenge. Really think about your reflecting on the work that we're said that we are doing for students, and how effectively are we doing them. It allows for that conversation, that transparent and trusting conversations that need to be already established through the norms and to actually take place in each group, each PLC. And collaborative culture, really critical, because you may meet, and I don't know, you have to think about your teams in your building, but you can meet, you can set those dates, you can even have your agenda, but reflecting on how effective are they from the beginning to we plan to participate in collaborative process, but are not always prepared in a growth mindset, all the way to we consistently participate and adapt the processes by coming fully prepared. Thinking about that work allows for that conversation to say, what areas of improvement are there? What are our challenges so we can improve to get better? So there are several tools out there, and we really worked together. It was about 5 or 6 of us that worked together as a team, and we really worked on this intently, getting feedback, as I said before, and using this tool to make sure that it's just not another tool, but a tool that allows for a conversation, not just, hey, a rubric and we've done it, but a conversation to be reflective and constantly improve teaching practices, as well as how we operate as a PLC. And so at this time, that is the end of my presentation, and we can now move to questions and answers.
First of all, there's a practical question that someone sent in, and that was someone logged in late and wants to know about getting copies of the slides. And the answer to that is www.nassp.org/webinar. This recording and the slides will be posted there very quickly, probably within a day or two. Here's a content question that came in. How does using design thinking methodology help you through the process?
So that goes to, and I believe they're referring to slide 7. And so it's a process that we went through in terms of creating our tools. And it allows for, when you have that process and that thinking through of those 5 steps, again, it allows you not just to go to the end product and saying, hey, this is what we're using and doing, but it allows for us, one, to relate with people. It allows us to think about, again, defining those challenges. It allows us to think about new ideas, then create them, and then have insight to the actual problem. So it's a process. And part of this is the process slows down the thinking of going straight to here's our answer, to working out what is the best solution to what we've determined as to be the challenge. So this process proves to be quite critical and is useful for this work.
Thank you. Another question is, have you used any parts of this tool in your own practice? You've talked a little bit about that, but could you elaborate for us, please?
Yes, absolutely. So as we created this tool, we went through just through those stages of that prototype and defining and sharing it with our PLCs to see, how we can improve and make this better. What we have found in terms of the group when we use it allows, let's just say for my particular building, it allows for teachers to think about, did I include these things in my lesson plan, but how effective have I been using in doing it? So for example, if I'm talking about instructional delivery, and we're having a conversation about that, how effective was my instructional delivery from beginning to innovative? And part of this is really having opportunities to be transparent and having those trusting relationships to have conversations such as this in the building. And it's ongoing. So it's not just using it one time, but using it consistently so you can see value in it and to see how it impacts student achievement, which is the ultimate goal.
Thank you. Jana, I'd like to invite you to come back in and say something about the resource you talked about sending out to participants. I'm afraid I'll get the details of it incorrect. Could you say a word about that for us, please?
I gotcha, but before I do that, Dr. Hall, I'd like to just hear a little bit more. If you could, you said in your talking points that this tool was designed to help teachers in PLCs after they've analyzed student work. That's very different than what is out there right now. What did you learn as a result of that?
Well, we learned that, one, that we wanted to make sure we had a tool that was very different. And once we were able to create that tool, we realized it allowed for a lot of reflection, and it allowed for individuals or groups to have honest conversations about what's happening in the classroom and what's also happening when we're working together. There are tools that are more like a rubric in terms of effectiveness, but it doesn't allow for a conversation to say, how can we improve and get better? But we first have to be realistic about where we are, and the components between beginning and innovative allow for those conversations to take place. And for everyone to own where they are and what are those steps of improvement. So if I'm at a beginning for instructional grouping, then I can see what areas I need to think about and reflect upon to get to the innovative part, and what do I need to do to stay there. And then, again, going back before, as you just said, with the protocol of analyzing student work, I should be able to see the results from there. But I have to come back on this tool that we talked about and got input from our staff, is that it allows us to be reflective. It allows us to really think intently about our work, our teaching practices, and how we're working together as a team to have those conversations to meet the goal of increasing student achievement.
Which I think is, you in a practitioner's example outlined the beauty of design thinking methodology, because you really are focused on who the end user is. and that self-reflection piece to really look at what happens after people have analyzed the student work and what do we need to continue to do, because it's not over at that point. So the work of this group was truly creative and innovative. And the tool is something that, you know, yes, it will impact those of you that worked on the tool, but it has an impact on the profession. So thank you for answering that question.
Jana,
And
before you go on, there's another question that's just come in. If I could put that to Dr. Hall.
yeah.
To begin this process in a PLC, would the teachers evaluate themselves in each domain using the tool as a rubric?
So for the way we thought about this is you very well could have, when you're working together as a PLC, you could very well think about, hey, where are we with this particular, when we're talking about this particular lesson or student? It does not have to be a rubric in terms of, okay, this is our starting. What you want to use it just as a conversation. So when you are introducing this, you want to introduce it as a conversation piece. Because most times when you use it as a rubric, some individuals use it more as it's a judgment. And that's not what this tool is for. It's for the intention for everyone, for a conversation to say, okay, sitting here and we're looking at teaching practices, at least for the first two domains. How are we in terms of that? Where are we? Did we have our instructional grouping? Did we do our delivery? This is just what we've been doing. It's not to say what I say, well, you are at the beginning or you are developing, but just in this work, and let's just talk about it. How can we get better? We stayed away from the word rubric, and that's why we went to performance guide and collaborative conversation, so that it would not, no one would feel to say, oh my gosh, at the beginning, I'm a terrible teacher. That wasn't the case for our conversation. It was, how can I improve in this area? And as I look at what can I do as I self-reflect, or we as a team self-reflect, to get better? So instead of doing no groups, how do we move to making having two groups and doing this consistently? Instead of having no differentiated with little resources, how do we then begin to plan even more resources and differentiating for our students? So allow for those honest conversations so we can improve. When we get away, when we start, like I said before, using rubrics and saying, I'm here, we get away from how we're going to get better. Let us reflect in order to do that. So I hope I answered your question.
I'll give the audience an opportunity to invite you again. If you have any further questions, please put them into the question box at this time. Jana, do you have any final words before we move on?
I do. Thank you. I think this is an excellent example of the kinds of things that can be produced through design thinking methodology. One of the things that I will let the audience know is that all of these are in prototype stage. So there are several tools that the audience can access. This is one of the tools. And what I would need you to do is leave your email address as part of this. If you would respond, we will make sure you get links to these. The whole idea is that an individual or a district could pick up this tool and adapt it to how they see it being used in their districts. So what we would say right now is that these are in the prototype stage. They are not finished, because our intent is to have them be customized by either the individual school or district that will be using those tools. So once again, if you would leave your email address as part of this webinar, we will follow up with you and make sure that you get the links you need to access the tools and resources.
And I see some people doing that right now, so thank you. Before we sign off, I'll wait a few minutes to make sure people have a chance to do that. Put that right into the question box, and then Jana will be able to access that and get those resources to you. Dr. Hall, any final words from you?
Well, only the last final word is that, one, I hope I answered all your questions. But secondly, again, hopefully you found this tool to be useful, because we thought, as Jana stated, we thought about educators, and we kept all of you as well as our own work in mind when we created the tool. And this tool, once again, it's not an I gotcha, it's not an evaluation, it's not a rubric. It is a collaborative conversation performance guide that allows PLCs to talk and discuss together about areas of improvement. And so if you look at it that way, my hope is that you're able to really find the true benefit in working together and having several conversations about student learning, teachers teaching, and the ultimate outcome is, the ultimate student outcome is for students to be successful and improve.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the work that you're doing in Prince George's County, and you are being with us today to help illuminate this work that the Wallace Foundation has been doing with principals all over the country. I'd like to just reiterate that we have an NASSP event coming up that we'd like to be sure we invite everybody to. The National Principals Conference is July 11 through 13 in Chicago. If you go to the NASSP website, you can find registration information about that. And you also can go there to find further information about future webinars, as well as the recording of this one, as I had mentioned. Thank you all for being with us. And with that, I will sign off.